Hold up. Wait a minute. You're telling me that they're Korean actors in a Christian movie? Finally? Well, it's about time. Heavenquest is a 2020 sci-fi fantasy adventure starring Patrick Thompson as Vangel, Peter Sargent as Azera, In Pyo Cha as Elder, Ricky Kim as Prince Elekai, and Alan Powell as Ammon. Now, really quick, just a quick disclaimer of why I'm reviewing this movie. I know I typically do other South Korean TV shows and movies, but I'm specifically singling this out because of what I said earlier. Because most of the times, if you look at any faith-based film, they're usually casting white actors in the lead roles, and then minority in the subservient role, in a lesser known role. So it was really cool to see a faith-based film, that not only a sci-fi fantasy faith-based film, but one with some Korean actors in it, and I honestly, the faith-based market needs diversity, please spare me, for those who think I'm virtue signaling or, woke, he's woke. No, it's just common sense, people. Like, you don't go to a restaurant and only want one dish of food. You don't go to, the clothing store and only want one color. God made this universe with many different colors, many different kinds, many different things. So why would we want that with our storytelling? So I'm very happy to see more actors and actresses of, color and minorities being in movies and stories. So this was a really nice breath of fresh air. Now, the question is the movie actually any good? Is the movie any good? And I would say it depends on who you are. If you're a typical average person who watches a lot of mainstream, this film may not be for you. But if you're a person who is familiar with the faith-based market, as I am, this movie will be a pleasant surprise to you. The film is actually based on an old book from, I think, the 1600s. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. It's by an author named Paul Bunyan, called The Pilgrim's Progress. So the story follows this character named Vangel, played by Patrick Thompson, as he receives a mysterious book and journeys out of the evil Southern Kingdom on his way to go to a place called the Northern Kingdom. Okay. And before I continue, there's something extremely important I want to share at the end of this review. So please stay until the end. It's extremely important about this film. But really quick, let's go over some of the things that worked with the film. First of all, I want to say, like I said before, you're finally seeing Korean actors in a Christian film or in a faith-based film. South Korea has pumped out a lot of great films over the past 10, 20 years that's been catching steam in the States and in all around the world. We have horror films like Train to Busan. You have action thrillers like The Man from Nowhere or The Suspect. You have romantic films like Ilmar, or you have films like historical dramas like The Assassination. So it's been really cool to see the Korean market step into so many different genres and see how they're just really good at telling stories, no matter what the genre is. And I would love to see, although this is not a Korean film per se, I would love to see faith-based Korean films, because the fact of the matter is, as far as I know, I know of one feature film that is Korean and faith-based that I have not seen, and I know of a short film that is a Korean film that that I have seen. I'll post a link to it in the in the details of this page below. But other than that, I haven't seen it, and I love the fact that they're bringing diversity to this. Another thing that's really great about this film is the cinematography. The cinematography is well done. The colors, the composition, and the picture, the costumes weren't bad. And for a low budget film, the quality was actually pretty decent. They did a great job of creating distinct characters. It had very distinct characters. I want to highlight one of the actors in the film, or the actress in the film, which is Peeta Sargent, who plays the character of Azera. She does an outstanding job. Her acting and her presence, she really has presence when she's on screen, and she really shows her acting prowess. And I think she does a phenomenal job. She's one of the highlights of the film. And actually, she plays one of my favorite characters. The character of Elder was pretty cool character. And it actually hints at a pretty interesting backstory. I like the character of Wiley Pratt, played by Eric Teed, and he was an interesting character. I liked one of the other techniques that they used in the storytelling was they were obscure for the most part at certain points about who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. So it was really cool to see different, different ways in which you had to determine who is the good guy, who's the bad guy, and stuff like that. Now, let's talk about what did not work for the film. The main character of Evangel, I think he was not a compelling character. I couldn't connect with him. I couldn't empathize with him. I didn't know or care about him too much. I felt like the character of Azera was very compelling. I cared about her, and even the character of Elder, I wish maybe he could have been the main character, but the character of Evangel, he wasn't a compelling character. I wouldn't lay the blame at the actor. I probably would lay the blame a little bit at the writer. They could have adjusted his character. Second problem I had with the film is there's a character named Prince Elekai, which is meant to be a Christ figure in the film. And he seems very underdeveloped. And it's a shame because he appears as if like this is like supposed to be a really cool character. And I felt like he was supposed to be an extremely important character. But I felt like the writer didn't take time to develop and make him and show like the importance of this character and how he could have been a lot more dimensional, like as far as the writing goes. I think Ricky Kim did the best with what he was given, but the character was not as compelling as I wanted it to be. So if they ever make a sequel to this film, I think exploring the character of Prince Elekai and making him a lot more dimensional would be in their favor. So I hope that they try to do that. Definitely he could have been a more impactful character, but they didn't take advantage of that. Another problem I had was that maybe, and this harkens back to an earlier point, was I mentioned how Evangel wasn't a compelling character. I think it would have been better if they chose to follow two different characters than the main character, which was, like I said before, Azera and Elder. Like I said, they were a lot more compelling, a lot more interesting in my opinion. So I felt like them not doing that hurt the film. It hurt the story. Another problem I had with the film was the pacing. There were times where the pacing seemed a little too slow. And because it's a low budget film, you can't afford to have pace issues with your story. Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, they can get away with pacing issues because they're a big budget film with a fan base that's already invested in it. But you can't afford to do that with this type of movie where you don't have a fan base, you don't have a following for the story that you're doing. So you can't afford to be slower in your pace. The next thing that I would say I had a problem with was the threat of the villain in the film wasn't palpable or terrifying. And that if they made the villain and the threat of the evil or the bad guy in this film more palpable and terrifying, I think it would have been a great way to speed up the pace of the film. The story would have been quicker, and it would have felt like it was always coming at you. If you think about films like The Dark Knight, one of the reasons why, even though it's 2 hours and 30 minutes long, or 45 minutes long, however long it is, one of the reasons why you can endure it being that long is because the Joker is such a compelling villain that keeps you invested for those 2 hours and 30 minutes, you know? So I think they should have worked a little more on their villains, making them a lot more threatening or compelling. But hey. Lastly, I think another problem I had with this film was the film needed a little more mystery and obscurity, not just for the villains, but just in the story, in order to keep the audience invested. Because here's the thing. When you're telling, I think with this type of film and the fact that it's a low budget film and it's a fantasy, if you keep the certain things obscure, particularly the villain or what the evil is that they're facing, it actually allows the audience to be more invested and more focused and more willing to endure even a pacing issue that you may have. And that's what good horror movies do, right? Good horror movies, they're really great at obscuring whatever the dark thing is or the evil thing is that is coming towards you. And I feel like maybe the writers should have invested more time in trying to make whatever the threat or the evil or the bad guy that is after the good guys, make it a little bit obscure, make it a little bit unseen. For example, I'm thinking of a particular show that I watched a couple years back where it's one of the best villains ever written. And one of the things they did was they never showed you the villain until episode 3. So all this time you hear people talking about the villain, but you don't see him until episode 3. So little things like that when you're telling a story on a budget is definitely can be helpful. So I'm gonna give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, like I said before, the movie's not for everybody, but if you're a person of faith or you're a Christian, or you're a parent of a religious parent, I think this would be a decent film. If you're heavy into fantasy and sci-fi, I think you might slightly be disappointed. But really quick, before we wrap this thing up, I want to share something extremely important. Sometimes I feel people give faith-based movies an unfair trial. They look at certain faith-based movies that are quote-unquote popular, and they judge the whole genre by that. And I don't like when people do that, because I don't like when people do that with any genre, with any, whether it's faith-based movies or horror movies or South Korean movies or Indian movies. It doesn't matter. You can't judge the whole market by a couple of movies that you've seen. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes what happens when I hear people reviewing movies like this and other faith-based movies, people already have a prejudice towards certain type of films, and so they'll pick on movies like this without giving the movie a fair trial. And my thing is this, like I said before, is the movie perfect? No. Is it horrible? No. Is it decent? Yes. Okay, in my opinion, because like I've said before in my other reviews, I've worked on film sets, I've written, I've worked with people who've worked on different films, so I understand how much effort it takes to create a film. No one ever intentionally goes in to do a bad film. Okay? So I think people need to be a lot more reasonable when they judge any film, not just faith-based films, and not be so quick to be prejudiced just because, you think certain faith-based films are cheesy or stuff like that. And to be honest with you, there are actually some pretty good faith-based films that I've seen in my lifetime. Just to give you some examples, there's Hacksaw Ridge, which is a really great faith-based film. There's Run the Race. There's Something to Sing About, Ben-Hur, Woodlawn, and other ones that don't always see the light of day. But these are great faith-based films that, with good storytelling, good acting, that are worth the time and worth the money. So, once again, let's not simply just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, faith-based films are all cheesy. That's not true. Are there a portion of faith-based films that are cheesy? Oh, you better believe it. However, if you dig, you will find some that are actually worth your time, and worth your watch. Okay? So anyways, that's my review of the film Heavenquest. Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Deuces.